Anytime you have a fear or a self-limiting belief, the first question I want you to ask is just why. Okay, so why do I have? Why do I think this way? Now that's a big question, and maybe the answer is pretty substantial. You recognize it's the first R. Then the part of that R is just to write it down.
Mm-hmm.
Second R is to release it. Now I like to release it by tearing it up, burning it, eating it, shredding it. I really don't care. Just get rid of the dang thing. Make it no longer exist. And then the last R is to react in opposition.
Welcome, Badass Manifester. I am so glad you are here. I'm your host and head coach, Ashley Gordon, master mindset and manifestation biz expert, founder of the quantum coaching certification, and multiple six-figure entrepreneur obsessed with empowering you to create quantum leaps in your energy, your life, and your business. This is the show to help you make magic your everyday normal, where the ripple effect is real and the guest experts are world class. My mission is to power your conscious and subconscious mind with manifestation teachings, business tools, and coaching techniques to put your potential into action. Consider this your weekly up level. Are you ready for quantum transformation? Let's do this. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Badass Manifester podcast. Today is really, really fun because I have a guest and it's a man. We have some male energy in the house. So what? Super excited. We have JM Ryerson. He is a mindset coach, host of the Let's Go Win podcast, author of the Amazon bestseller, Let's Go Win, The Keys to Living Your Best Life, and Champions Daily Playbook. He coaches leaders, entrepreneurs, and teams on peak performance and how to live their best life. And his passion is to help others succeed at work, at home, and in life by offering simple tools that provide that work-life balance that we all seek so much. So I'm super pumped. So welcome, JM. Super excited that you're here.
Thanks for having me, Ashley. I'm glad to bring as much male energy as possible. Hopefully that fits.
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. So how did you get to this place of saying in your life, like, it's time for me to, teach on leadership, become an author, and start this, this kind of, I want to call it like a movement of Let's Go In?
Well, actually, I love that you call it a movement because that's exactly what it is. It is a movement. It's a mindset. It's a philosophy. And it all started because I wrote the book for my two boys. I have a 16 and 12-year-old now. And the idea was to write a book so that if I got hit by a bus, then my kids would at least have an idea of some of the philosophies, not just from me, but my parents, grandparents, authors, and mentors, all in one little simple and easy to read thing, so that they could look and say, all right, what did Dad think about mindfulness or courage or fun or vulnerability? Those are some of the chapters. And it just ended up taking me on this really cool path because I actually wasn't going to publish it for more than just two people. But the gal I was working with said, I didn't know you're selfish. And I said, I don't think I'm selfish. Said, if you don't publish this and share it with more than two people, you're a selfish human.
You're selfish. Oh my gosh. Well, that's a reframe for you.
It was. And you know what? She was spot on. And I'm so glad she said it because it sent me on this really amazing journey of the podcast and coaching and writing more books. And so I get to wake up every day and inspire people or work on inspiring people to live their best lives. That's why the company exists. And it's just, I'm blessed.
Wow. That is so cool. So when you had that desire to write that for your kids, how did they receive that? Like, how old were they when you wrote it?
So when I actually finished writing it, they were, 8 and 11-ish, maybe 12 at the time, somewhere in that range. Cool. And one of them has read it. The older one has, the younger one has not. So it's kind of funny. The ego gets involved because you're like, man, I wrote that for you. They'll get around to it eventually.
Yeah, they'll get around to it. That's super cool that you wrote that for them. I love that. I love that you were thinking about putting down these ideas to pass down as your legacy, you know?
Yeah, I just look at it, I don't believe in regrets. And
Yeah.
so, but the one thing I will say that I wish I'd done more of is ask questions. Now, I recently
Yeah.
lost my dad, and
Mhm.
I did have the perspective to ask a lot of questions. But of course, now there's still more questions that I want to ask. But, like my grandparents that I've lost, I wish I could have asked some things. So I just didn't want to leave as much of a stone unturned as possible in case we didn't have a conversation about, I don't know, what transcend, which is a big word for me. What does
Yeah.
that mean and why is that important? And
Yeah.
so that's what I want to leave for them.
I love that. So what does that mean to you?
Overcoming self-limiting beliefs is the most concise meaning I've put to it. To
Yeah,
transcend is to overcome those beliefs.
that's beautiful. And so how do you work on overcoming those limiting beliefs for yourself, and how do you teach others to, work on that as well?
Yeah, I have a simple thing that I teach quite a few of my clients and anybody that's willing to listen, honestly, because I think
Yeah.
it's so simple. Anytime you have a fear or a self-limiting belief, the first question I want you to ask is just why. Okay, so why do I have? Why do I think this way? Now that's a big question, and maybe the answer is pretty substantial. So let's just take a fear instead. Let's just take a small part, and the first thing is to recognize I have this fear. So you recognize is the first R. Then the part of that R is just to write it down.
Hmm.
Second R is to release it. Now, I
Hmm.
like to release it by tearing it up, burning it, eating it, shredding it. I really don't care. Just get rid of the dang thing, make it no longer exist. And then the last R is to react in opposition.
Hey, badass manifestors. This is Jenna from Ashley's team, here to tell you that you are one in a million. You are literally one in a million downloads of this podcast. And as a way to say thank you and celebrate, we are hosting an epic giveaway on Instagram. Head on over there and follow the quantum.coach. Like our post about the giveaway, comment and share, and then apply to the Quantum Coaching Academy, because you could win a prize of up to $1,000 off your tuition. So if you've been waiting to apply, now is the time. The giveaway runs from Tuesday the 3rd through Friday the 6th of January, and our 3 winners will be announced on Monday, January 9th. Best of luck, and thank you so much for being here.
So if somebody's limiting belief is I'm not a great speaker, because this comes up a lot. I don't like to public speak. And I'm like, I'll ask a question of why, and then they can't really get to it. So I said, let's just write it down. Okay, cool. And let's go ahead and release it. I like to burn. I guess I'm pyro a little bit. I'll burn it. And then ultimately, let's react in opposition. Let's just talk. And when I make them realize, like, hey, you do one-on-one speaking is public speaking all the time. What if we added 9 more people? What if we
Yeah.
added 100 people? Is there really any difference? And what they come to realize, if they do that again and again and again, it's just a simple tool to get rid of whatever fear is in your way. Because
Mm.
I do believe that everything you want is on the other side of fear.
Yeah, it's so powerful. What's coming through to me now is like, as I'm listening to you, I'm loving what you're saying, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, my husband would never think to like, let me recognize and release and, burn this piece of paper with my limiting beliefs. And it's just so refreshing to see a man who is willing to be vulnerable and to get clear around what's coming up for you. Like, what is that? I'm just curious on a personal level. What is that process like for you? Just as an example to like, my husband, because I'm so introspective and I do what I do and, where I'm coach and all that. Of course, my husband gets coaching from me in a way where it's like, I'll be like, what's coming up for you? And what are you making that mean? And like, we're digging into different things that are coming up, but he wouldn't necessarily do that on his own.
Sure.
So I'm curious what that process is like for you when something like triggers you, or like, how do you, yeah.
Yeah. So my overall philosophy is I always want to get better every single day, right? It's just growth mindset. It's just I want to get better. Now, you mentioned the word vulnerability, and the first chapter of my book is vulnerability. Now, you're talking to a kid from Montana that was taught boys don't cry. So it's not like I was really taught, hey, let's be vulnerable. Let's put it
Yeah.
out there. In fact, I was taught the exact opposite, as a lot of males and some females, but certainly males, it's kind of that thing that we're taught. And what I realized is that my relationships weren't as fulfilling, right? My leadership wasn't nearly as strong. In most of my life, it just felt not 100% like rewarding.
Mhm.
And why is that? Because I was compromising all these things that are important to me. Like, for instance, I love to sing, I love to dance. Well, again, not the most masculine things to do, but guess what? It doesn't matter. I like to do them. So who cares?
Yeah.
And so for me, I just look at what do I want in this world and what is getting in my way of getting there. So in my relationship, if I'm not being vulnerable with my wife, if I'm not saying, honey, you look amazing, I think you're beautiful, I think you're smart, or whatever it is, and instead I'm seeing her as something adversarial or in my way of something, it's like, what do you want out of this relationship? Well, I want to love my wife and I want to have a solid relationship. So why don't I just put my ego aside and tell her, I think you're beautiful. I think you're amazing. Thank you for everything you do for me. And it's okay that you just yelled at me about the dishes. Who cares? It's not a big deal. So for me, it's just, what do I want out of this thing, this
Yeah.
relationship, and how can I get there in the shortest period of time? Typically, it's by facing whatever fear, whatever ego, and just truly being myself.
Yeah. That's so beautiful that you can do that. And yeah, set aside your ego, or like maybe your wife did something that maybe hurt your feelings, and you can voice that and be like, listen, that actually hurt me. That's being vulnerable too. Um, it's interesting because I don't know if you notice this, but especially for men, like I feel like vulnerability, like you said, it's not something that you're like raised to do. But not only that, it sounds like you have a lot of vision where you're like, I want to get better every day. And I'm like, what do I want to get out of this life? What do I want to get out of this relationship? And you are seeing it in its peak, in its vision, like in its highest, grandest version of what it could be. And I find that a lot of men that I experience are they're not visionaries, right? Would you consider yourself a visionary?
It's interesting. I wouldn't have said that. I think when the way you put that out there, the picture in my mind, I just saw my boys, right?
Yeah.
All I think about is I'm an example to my boys. So if I'm stuck in my way, if I'm like, do it because dad says so, I'm teaching them this repetitive thing. And I don't want that. I want my boys to be truly, cultured and educated and willing to open themselves up. So I don't know that I see myself as a visionary.
Yeah.
I know that I'm trying to be the best example for these two boys that I'm responsible for. And I want them to be a better version of me someday. I want them to be so, far superior to anything I was able to accomplish. That's my goal. I want them to be better, have a better life, do better things for this world than I was able to accomplish. So my goal is to show them as my very best, and
Yeah.
they can do a little bit better.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's awesome. Yeah. And I don't want to say like, oh, men aren't visionary, because that's not true at all. I think there are some men that are totally, but even what you're saying now, like you're seeing the future, you're seeing what you want for them, as opposed to just seeing them right now, you know? And I was talking to one of my spiritual teachers, and she was like, yeah, women are the visionaries. They hold the vision for the family, and the men are like the hunters and gatherers. And they're like looking at what's right in front of them and seeing what they can bring home for dinner to provide for their family. And I thought that that was really interesting. I don't know how that's relevant to this conversation, but I just felt like sharing that. So, okay, tell me a little bit about authenticity, because I know that that's a big part of your book, a big part of what you teach about showing up as you. And what was that journey like for you personally, of like breaking through that? And then how you help others do that?
Yeah, so show up as you has become this really profound idea that I try to coach and I definitely speak on often, because for me, as many of us, we start to put on masks when we're probably fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade. At some
Yeah.
point, we start trying to fit in, and so we'll compromise value some non-negotiable we'll compromise on, and we start putting on all these masks. And what I realized is this gets really heavy, man. There's a lot that I have to remember that when the true self is really inside, it's really easy to be. And my best example that I give is I'm 6'5". Okay. That's how tall I am. God made me that way. Now, it takes zero effort for me to be 6'5". It takes zero time, zero energy, and my back is completely in alignment. Now, I could say, Ashley, I'm actually 5'5", and enough time and energy and getting my back all scrunched up, I could probably convince you I'm 5'5". But why? Why would I spend all that time to be something that I'm not?
Mm.
And I see it all the time. And I think when it really hit for me, Ashley, when I finally said enough is enough, my wife and I got separated for a year, right? This woman, that the love of my life, the person that I wanted to build this future, have these kids with, all these things. At some point I looked at her and I loathed her, man. I had such spite and anger towards this human being. And what I realized is it wasn't my authentic self that really had it. It was all the ego, all the stuff that was in the way. And when I finally was able to shed all that, and to your point, say, you know what, when you do this, it really hurts my feelings. By the way, when I did that, I am so sorry.
Yeah.
When I was able to just have those simple conversations,
Taking responsibility and also being vulnerable.
100%, right? Like, I am responsible for my actions. And she owned her side as well. And when we were able to put down the swords, it was like our hearts opened back up again. And our relationship since has been way better than it ever was before.
Mm.
I think that's when I said enough of the charade. Like,
Yeah.
I just want to be me because it takes zero effort, and not everybody's going to like me, right? Some listeners will be like, this guy's full of shit. Some will be like, you know what? He's great. And by the way, this is just me. So if you feel that way, that I can't really help it. And it's none of my business anyway. I'm just going to put my very best self out there. And I hope that you receive it that way. Once I started doing that in my business, it exploded. My relationships got better. And so it was like, it took almost losing everything to realize I had something pretty amazing. Let's really enjoy it.
Wow. 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 I think that is such a great example of like the metaphor of like your height and like trying to change yourself. What would you say to someone who maybe is in the process of realizing that they're not being fully authentic in their life? Like, what are some steps that they can take to kind of reroute back to their truth?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of writing. That's the first thing I'm going to say is like, hey, let's just write about whatever your true authentic self is. And people look at me funny and they're like, I don't write. I'm like, look, I don't want you to put any judgment on whatever you're going to write, just as the paper won't judge you, right? I've never had a piece of paper say, you're brilliant. I've never had it say you're an idiot. It doesn't say anything. It just accepts the pen and to the paper. But what happens is I get all this stuff out of my head.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows me to start thinking clearly. Then we're going to quiet the mind for a moment and just think back to when you're 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
When you meet a 5-year-old, they want to be an astronaut. They want to be an NBA superstar. They want to be the president, the Pope, whatever their thing is. There are zero restrictions, zero compromises. I've never heard a 5-year-old be like, hey, I'm going to be a insurance salesman. And no offense to insurance sales guys, I did it for a long time. But typically you don't hear 5-year-olds say, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. They give zero shits, right? Zero fucks.
They're like, we're going to put it out there.
Yeah.
We're going to dance like nobody's watching.
Yeah.
And that 5-year-old, by the way, it's still in there.
Yeah.
That never got lost. You have stuffed all this shit on top of it so that your 5-year-old can barely like breathe or even seek to get out into light. And so when you write it out, when you just write and then you get quiet and you think back to who you really are, it'll come through. And it can be scary, by the way, because I know there's some traumatic stuff that's happened to people in their childhood. But guess what? If you really want to grow, you have to go through that.
Yeah.
So that's how I get people to do it, is I'm like, look, we're going to write, we're going to get quiet, and we're going to find who that true you is again, because it's in there. It's just buried under all these masks.
Mm. how did you get so wise? How did you get so into like knowing all of this and realizing this?
Well, thank you for calling me wise. I don't get that very often. No, I've done a lot of work
Yeah,
in terms of introspection.
sure.
I meditate every single day because if I don't, I'm not as happy. I'm not as
Yeah.
fulfilled. I'm not as insightful, perhaps.
Connected.
Yeah, connected. Great word. Thank you. That's absolutely perfect. And the other thing is I read voraciously. I mean, I'm 30 to 40 books a year. I
Wow.
think when you read someone that has put their everything, blood, sweat, and tears into something, you should get something from it. Even if you don't love the book, it's like you find someone else's perspective on the world, on a subject, and it opens you up to say, wow, there's a lot to this world if we're willing to explore it just a little bit. So that's kind of been my path and journey
Love
is
that.
continuing to read, write,
Mhm.
and meditate. And
And
it,
work on yourself.
yeah,
Yeah. That's so awesome. What was the first personal development book you've ever read?
wow. That is a great question. And because I was on a train I studied abroad.
Where? Me too.
Okay, cool. I was in the Netherlands.
Nice. I was in Florence.
Oh, well, that's pretty amazing. The first, oh my gosh, you got me. And I'm thinking of three books, and I'm like, I definitely read Think and Grow Rich.
Yep.
Like, I think there was The Alchemist, but that
Hmm.
may have not been out at that time. And there's a book with a motorcycle on it, and it's failing me right now. And so it's one of those three would be my.
Okay. Cool. I think it's just
Remember your
interesting.
first? That's a really
I
good.
do. I do only because it was just like the order in which it was like the order of my awakening. So it was like I watched the movie The Secret first, and then I read the book Conversations with God. Have you read that?
Such a good book.
Oh, so everyone read that book. Like it is that really like woke me up I gotta read that again. It was such a good book.
Actually, there are books that we should reread. Like for me,
Yeah.
I wanted to say Man's Search for Meaning, but it wasn't. I just read that so frequently
Yeah.
because I'm not saying that's necessarily a personal development book, but that's a perspective book for me.
Right.
No matter what is going on in my life, I can go back to that book and be like, really? Are you
Hmm.
really bitching about anything right now? Look at Viktor Frankl and see what he went through.
Hmm.
And so that's the book I wanted to say, but it wasn't the first one.
Okay, cool. Well, that's maybe your favorite one, Man's Search for Meaning.
It is certainly
Up
a
there.
mindset or Man Search for Meaning would be the two. I think Carol Dweck's book is remarkable. She has changed our world in less than 20 years.
What book is that?
That's mindset.
Mindset. Okay, I've never heard of that book.
Oh my gosh. So I'm not saying you're going to think it's like the greatest read ever, but the content is remarkable and it's profoundly simple. And what's cool is you see it in every school. So I know you got a little one bacon in there.
Yeah.
They go to school. Carol Dweck will have greatly affected in a positive way school curriculum and education reform.
Wow. That's amazing. Okay, I'm gonna read that. I have a couple questions. How do you interact, like knowing what you know about the consciousness and mindset and everything we're talking about? Obviously, you wrote that book, your book for your kids, but like, do you teach that like as things come up for them as they're living their life, and you're imparting, lessons and learning with them, are they getting it? Do they understand?
I mean, they have their own journey, of course.
Yeah.
And so, yes, here's what I would say. They are way further along than I was at 16. Like, I look at my 16-year-old and I'm like, wow, it's so hypocritical of me to be talking to him about, hey, you need to be doing this better because I was nowhere near.
Mhm.
But they're still he's still 16, right? And
Yeah.
he still has hormones. So it is interesting to watch them apply these lessons.
Mhm.
And he's a high level tennis player. So
Cool.
much of what we talk about is literally focused on mindset, on the ability to control your emotions.
Tennis is such a mindset game. Yeah.
It's like you're
My
all
husband played in college, so I'm familiar.
awesome. So, I mean, it is one of the most challenging sports because of that. You're all by yourself.
Yeah,
And the
absolutely.
big lesson that I try to teach TJ is his name. I'm like, look, bud, we want to respond, not react. And that's literally why I meditate daily, is because truth be told, I have a quick trigger. Like I have a short temper, but through 20 some odd years of meditating, it's there, but it's hopefully it's way down deep. Like I'm able to control how I respond. Now, emotions happen like that, right? Like
Mhm.
10 times, 100 times faster than me snapping my fingers, probably a million times faster. Like it happens so quickly. So you can't stop the emotion, but you do have the ability once it gets there to actually respond. And
Mhm.
so frequently when we don't act the way we want to, it's because we have 100% reacted. And I've done that. And I have, things that I wish I hadn't done, in an argument. And so I don't want to do that again. I don't like to live with regret. So I want to say, how can I respond? So to your point with the kids, yeah, they have their own journey, but they're way further ahead than I was.
Yeah, it's good that you recognize too that they have their own journey. Like we're all on our own journey, and each person's journey is perfect, no matter how it turns out. Everyone's getting what they need along the way. I'm curious for someone like you who's super motivated and driven to like be better every day, and like with your movement of Let's Go Win and your book, like how do you I'm curious what success looks means to you.
It's a big question. For me, it's going to start with my boys. Unfortunately for your listeners, it's getting repetitive, but my
Not at all.
my job is in this world is really these two human beings, right? So I look at these two, and it's not just mine, it's my wife and I, to make sure that these boys really give back and make the world a better place. So it starts there. In terms of Let's Go Win, I've called this my legacy company because I've built 3 other companies prior to this, but nothing made me get out of bed and be like, yes, I get to do this.
Mhm.
Something cool kind of happened to me. And again, I am not looking for, it's not called jmryerson.com for a reason, because it's not about me. This is an idea. Let's Go Win. If I win, you win. If Ashley wins, I win. It's like, that's the whole idea.
Yeah.
And I was sitting on an airplane on Sunday, and this gentleman looks over to me and he goes, "Are you Ryerson?" And I was like, yeah, man." He's like, "Let's Go Win. My buddy, he just went through your program."
No way.
Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, dude, that's amazing." And I said, "Hopefully he got some value from it." And he's like, "He will never tell you this, but," and he told me this really cool thing. Like it really impacted him. It helped him in his relationship. And to me, that was, I don't need the accolades, but it was nice to have an affirmation like, hey, something you put out to this world, it made a difference in such and such a world. And so that is what I kind of determine success by, is my
Yeah.
ability to influence people to live better lives.
That is so cool. Keep going.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off,
Oh.
but that's all I'm looking for is I want people eventually to look at Let's Go In and say, this made my life better, right?
Mhm.
It made my kids' life better. It made my company's life better. That would be the hope. And when I wrote the purpose of our company to inspire people to live their best lives, I wrote that very intentionally because I'll never get there.
Mhm.
Not everyone is going to live their best life. So my job on this planet is never going to be done. And I'm cool with that because it means I got to wake up and do my best.
Wow. That is amazing. It's amazing that you had that opportunity, like that moment that you manifested with that person on the plane to just give you that confirmation, that validation of like, keep going, It's like God wink.
It really was because, as you know, being an entrepreneur, and there's moments where you're like, God, I'm getting
Yeah,
ass kicked every single
I
day.
know.
And you keep putting this like content or value out there, and like you have like 2 people follow it, and you're like, I'm not supposed to be looking at that, but man, it feels like I'm doing more than that.
Yes. Yeah, totally. And I say this all the time. All of my listeners know this, but I want to tell you, you know, the Avicii song that's called Wake Me Up?
Yes.
Wake me up when it's all over. So in the beginning of that song, it says, feeling my way through the darkness, guided by a beating heart. I can't tell where this journey will end, but I know where it starts. And I feel like that's entrepreneurship. Like you're just feeling your way through the darkness, like hoping and praying that your impact will be felt and like you're going to be making a difference in this world. And like you're leading from your heart. And that's it. That's all you can do.
It's so true too. I think about this all the time. I'm like, because there's tangible success, like monetarily speaking, right?
Sure.
And you can say, oh, I'm successful because I made 7 figures. Well, I've done that and I didn't feel any better or worse than when I was making 30,000 a year. So that's not my intrinsic like motivator. That's not what
Yeah.
gets me going. What truly gets me going, obviously taking care of my family, my kids and my wife, that's most important. And once that's done, if I'm happy on a daily basis, if I'm
Yeah.
like, I wake up and I'm like, yes, let's go. I think that's success for me.
Yeah.
I have been in a place, just over 11 years ago, separated and sitting there miserable. Like, this sucks, man. And I was very monetarily speaking, very successful. So I guess when I love the question you asked, and I'm going to spend some time on it now. I'm going to
Yeah.
get more on it, but it's truly just being happy. Like, I want to be happy for the
Yeah.
rest of my life. And on a daily basis, doing what I do, I get to be.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I was just having this conversation with my husband and his brother and his father about happiness and like what makes you happy. And like everybody, it's really what we value, right? Like whatever you value is what makes you happy. And so it's just figuring out like what is it that you truly value? Because if you're listening to this right now and you're like, I really honestly have no idea, and that's totally fair. You might not know, and that's fine. So just think about what do you value most in your life and how can you create more of that? Because that's what'll make you happy.
Yeah, that's so well put. And it's, again, that's someone that's obviously spent time with quiet time, right? To figure out what makes
Yeah.
you happy. I love how you put that. It's amazing.
Yeah. Cool. This has been such a good conversation. So what else? I mean, I'm curious what makes you a badass manifester?
Wow. My wife and I talk about this frequently because she manifests things all the time.
Yeah.
She's very, very, very good at it. And often I'll question like, am I that good at manifesting? Like I've questioned, even though I know that's like the exact opposite of what I'm supposed to do. And she goes, JM, when have you ever not truly got whatever you wanted?
Mm-hmm.
And I had to think, and I was like, I couldn't come up with one thing when I really wanted something. And whether that be a company, a relationship, uh, you know, things just show up. And so she has been so good at reinforcing that in me. She's like, look, you do it all the time. You have a little perfectionist in you, so you don't think you're doing as great a job as you could be.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, everything you've ever wanted, you manifest. And she's right. So I don't know what that is other than having great people around me, because when you're doubting yourself, and I did this for years, when you have any doubts about your ability, your thoughts, your blah, 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 and you're surrounded with people that are happy to bring you down with them,
Yep.
guess what? It will get worse. And I've done that. The biggest change I think for me that's helped in this badass manifesting is surrounding myself with amazing people that
Mm-hmm.
inspire me to be better and lift me up. So I think that would be my long answer to say surround myself with amazing humans.
I think that's a beautiful answer. Nobody's ever said that on the podcast. Love that. Love, love, love that. It's so true. Like, yeah, your wife reminds you how powerful you are. Like, what better gift to have a partner to do that? So cool.
It is. And I have to say, she's pretty remarkable for her, in her own mind or in her own self. She's really awesome. But it is, man, because she doesn't question it. And
Yeah.
often, this is sorry if I'm going over
No,
time.
it's okay.
if you look in the mirror, how often are we right? Like I'm wrong so often. And my best example I give is if I listen to myself on a recording, my
Mhm.
voice sounds way different than I think it does. And so other people hear it and they see exactly what it is. We have this perception of who we are. And to have people around us that see our true shining light and
Yes.
support us, there's not a greater gift that I can think of.
That's why we're here. Like we can't change the world alone. We need each other to remind us, to be that validation, to be that confirmation, to, cheer us on, to like all of it. So that's awesome. This has been so good. Thank you so much. Where can everyone connect with you and buy your book and all the things?
Yeah, so thank you. And it has been awesome. You're an amazing host and great question.
Yeah.
Let's go win.com. Yeah, my books, the free stuff's on there, and
Cool.
blogs and all that good stuff is on there. Let's Go Win podcast, which by the way, Ashley was an amazing guest. That's coming out shortly, or I don't know when this will drop, but it'll come out. And
Yeah, go listen.
Ashley talked about their journey, and it's pretty profound the way you said that. So I hope that you check that out. And then ultimately, Let's Go Win 365, any social media platform. Just interact, man. I'm a normal human being. I love talking to people. I love to connect. So I'd love to hear from the audience.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, for being open, vulnerable, and just keeping it real. Let's go win.
Thank you.
Boom.
Whoa.
All right, everyone. Definitely let us know how you loved this episode. What part was your favorite? Tag us. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, bye. Woo! We did some work today. Thank you so much for listening. You know I love my BAM fam. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who you know would love it too, because we live for the ripple effect over here. And how can you best support the show? Make sure you're subscribed, hit the 5 stars, and leave a review on iTunes, and let me know how the podcast has impacted you. I love being part of your real-time journey, so screenshot the episode and tag me and my guests on Instagram at ManifestWithAsh. Now say it with me. I am my own power source. I am the master of my own energy, and I deserve everything that I desire. We don't just talk about it over here, we be about it. Now go get 'em.